The strategic importance of air power in times of war is something we have emphasized in many of our reports. With the rapid advancement of technology, the role of air power has become even more decisive. What is happening in conflict zones around the world clearly demonstrates this fact. Today, the focus of wars no longer seems to be on people, but on warplanes. Unmanned aerial vehicles have also become an important part of the equation. However, Russia's Air Force seems to be struggling to adapt to these developments. Since the beginning of the war, the Ukrainian armed forces have dealt serious blows to the Russian Air Force with their operations. Most of the most important air weapons of the Russian Air Force were destroyed. It was also proved during this process that the Russian air defense systems were not as powerful as claimed. The Crimean Peninsula, one of the main targets for both the Russian army and the Ukrainian army, has witnessed an important turning point in recent days. The recent incident marks an important development regarding the Russian Air Force. What is this development? Let's take a look together. Before we start our report, I need to make a small reminder. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring you the developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. You can also support me and my team by using the Super Thanks button below the video. Thank you for your support. Let's start if you are ready. The Pioneer reports. The war between Russia and Ukraine continues in full intensity. The Ukrainian army continues its efforts to neutralize the ground attacks of the Russian armed forces on Ukrainian territory. The Ukrainian naval forces are delivering one blow after another to the Russian presence in the Black Sea, and Ukrainian air defense systems are playing an active role against the Russian Air Force threatening Ukrainian airspace. With this multifaceted resistance, the Ukrainian armed forces have severely challenged the Russian military. Russia's losses have increased significantly, and this seriously threatens the sustainability of the Russian occupation. Ukraine's determination and resistance calls into question the permanence of the Ukrainian territories occupied by the Russian army. The Crimean Peninsula is of critical importance for these territories, and the Ukrainian armed forces have clearly stated its main objective from the beginning of the war. Since 2014, the occupied Crimean Peninsula has been an extremely important target for the Ukrainian armed forces. Similarly, it is of equal strategic importance for the Russian armed forces. The Russian armed forces had built up a large military buildup on the Crimean Peninsula, which it occupied in 2014, and this buildup has suffered heavy losses in recent days due to attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces. The Ukrainian armed forces have dealt serious blows to the Russian military buildup while carrying out attacks on the Crimean Peninsula. These attacks have caused the Russian army to constantly develop new strategies to compensate for its losses. We have addressed this issue in our previous reports. Recently, President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin made a controversial decision to launch a new railway line project to support Russian troops on the Crimean Peninsula. At the same time, the Ukrainian armed forces have made it clear that they will resolutely fight any Russian moves against the Crimean Peninsula. The moves against the Crimean Peninsula are not limited to the transportation of supplies, but the surveillance activities of the Russian military are also targeted by the Ukrainian armed forces. Recently, Ukrainian sources have stated that any Russian aircraft attempting to violate Ukrainian airspace over the Crimean Peninsula is a legitimate target. However, the Russian armed forces once again underestimated Ukraine's resolve. Underestimating Ukraine, the Russian leadership and military leadership have paid a heavy price for this mistake before. Recently, it was reported that another fighter jet of the Russian Air Force was successfully destroyed by the Ukrainian air defense forces in the airspace of the Crimean Peninsula. According to local sources, Ukrainian air defense systems successfully shot down the Russian fighter jet in the vicinity of the Crimean Peninsula. As a result of this shot, the fighter jet in the sky received heavy damage and began to rapidly lose altitude. According to reports, this fighter jet was in the vicinity of Sevastopol. Although no clear report was initially available, the facts gradually emerged. The Russian fighter jet was destroyed and buried in the cold and dark waters of the Black Sea. The pilot of the fighter managed to eject himself before the plane crashed. The statement on the subject came from Mikhail Razvozayev, Russia's occupation governor of Sevastopol. Razvozeyev used the following statements on the subject. The pilot of the fighter jet managed to eject himself along with the hit. The fighter crashed off the coast of Sevastopol. No civilian objects were damaged during the fall of the aircraft. The pilot was caught by rescuers from the Sevastopol Rescue Service 200 meters from the shore. His life is not in danger. The armed forces of Ukraine continue to fight effectively against the Crimean Peninsula, and we have emphasized many times how critical these offensives are. The Russian presence in Crimea is of great strategic importance for the President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin. As is well known, the Putin administration is pursuing an expansionist policy, and for this policy to succeed, Russia needs a strong position in the Black Sea. There are two important elements to ensure this strong position in the Black Sea. The first of these is the Black Sea Fleet. We have often reported on the state of the Black Sea Fleet. Successful attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces have caused the Black Sea Fleet to suffer losses, and it is no longer sufficient for Russia's dominance in the Black Sea. This could pose a serious strategic challenge for the Putin administration and weaken Russia's influence in the region. The Crimean Peninsula is strategically important and stands out as a critical element of maritime dominance. The location of this region is of great value in terms of Black Sea dominance. Russian President Vladimir Putin is well aware of this fact and is making great efforts to ensure the continued presence of Russian troops in the region. However, the efforts of the Ukrainian armed forces are challenging Russia's dominance in Crimea. For the time being, the situation seems to be developing in favor of the Ukrainian army. Because the Ukrainian army's operations in and around the Crimean Peninsula are dealing serious blows to the Russian army. Moreover, there is no clear sign yet that the Russian military has been able to find a significant solution to this situation. What do you think? Do you think the offensive capacity of the Ukrainian armed forces can end the Russian occupation? Can Ukraine's military success be enough to end Russia's presence in Crimea? Is Ukraine's defense strategy effective against the Russian occupation? Can the strength of the Ukrainian armed forces undermine Russia's sovereignty in the region? How does Ukraine's defense capability affect Russia's strategic objectives in Crimea? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about your comments.